that want another supporters trust? Is it the same guys?
I don't know. They're probably the same people that paid that money to that con man that was going to fly the plane over the stadium. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just think it's bonkers, really. I mean, what do you think you're trying to do? You're just wasting your time.
But also, I think you have to be careful what you wish for. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want to be in Newcastle's situation, wishing for a Saudi regime to come. It's like whatever you say about ENIC, they haven't chopped someone up and left them in a bag.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned
Newcastle. And I think
Newcastle.
that from a custodianship point of view, it's like it's like, look, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but I believe in Daniel Levy. I believe Daniel Levy when he says he cares about leaving Spurs in better shape than what he found it. And we can't deny that we're in much better shape now than we were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What people don't get about Daniel Levy is that he runs Spurs in a very frugal way. They don't get that isn't such a bad thing. They just see it as a problem when they see Chelsea go out and spend 200 million this summer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
They're drawing comparisons you can't make.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we want to compete. I'm not saying we shouldn't compete. And I think the thing is that we have to find the Spurs way of both being innovative and also being, because we've done this for years where we've been, in that sort of, on those upper echelons without spending in the same way. And the thing is how do we continue to do that as the market gets more and more where the spending matters? And so there's something about innovation, there's something about our youth setup. You can't underestimate the investment that's gone into the training centre and what that means to try and bring on young players. So we have to do both of those things. And you know what? I personally don't think the football's going to operate like this forever. Look at what's happened with COVID. It's like football clubs run on budgets like everybody else, even the ones that have got very, very rich benefactors. The money's not limitless.
Well, even Jurgen Klopp was talking about that the other day. In his interview, he mentioned about the fact that Liverpool, I don't think they've spent a lot of money this summer. And he quoted Chelsea and said, that we don't, we're not run by oligarchs and
no, they run it very similarly
and supported by countries. So it's all about it's those little marginal gains which they made and the investment at the right time. So talking of they made a massive sale, didn't they, to trigger their their success. They got rid of Coutinho and brought in the two players that they needed to bring in to balance up their squad. So in terms of we can now talk about transfers. So we'll go back. We'll start off by going back to the women's side, Chris. So massive, absolutely massive news from the women's side. You must. Do you know that the thing that how big this was, right? And was that people men from the men's side that always don't care about, whenever they talk about women's football, whenever it's like, oh, I don't care, who cares, don't care about women's football. All of a sudden it's like, yeah, Spurs have signed the most amazing players in world football from the US, World Cup winning player, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden they're going, fucking hell, yes. Go on, get in there, son. You know what I mean? So,
well, I think
talk to us.
I think when Ozzy and Ricky signed in 1978 after winning the World Cup, it transformed English football, and it put Spurs in a different place in terms of ambition and style and all of those other things. And for me, there's some comparisons to be drawn there. Alex Morgan's just won the World Cup. She's won the World Cup twice. It is arguably, and I've saw this reported, these last couple of days, the biggest signing in WSL history. And I think, the combination of Alex Morgan and the 5 or 6 other World Cup winners that have come from the United States into the WSL are doing something to transform women's football in this country. But also it's saying something about what Spurs' ambitions are. And we're the only team in the WSL that have done it, as I would say, properly. We started, when I used to run a women's football team in the late 90s, right? And we used to play the Spurs reserves team, and I'm talking like proper, like grassroots Hackney Marshes football here. And the Spurs women's team have been promoted through footballing merit throughout the leagues and have ended up in the WSL because of it. Nobody else has done that. And the fact that we've done it like that, and now we're saying, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're Tottenham Hotspur. We're going to do it this way. I think this signing is an absolute masterstroke, because I think what it does is it kind of delights the fans. It shows the ambition. It does incredible things for the rest of the players, because actually look who you've got as your teammate. Look at Rihanna Dean, is an England under-21 international. She's a terrific player. Imagine what she's going to learn from Alex Morgan. But then also, you're making different kind of forays into the American market. There's a new broadcast deal for the WSL across MSNBC and other American broadcasters, because there are so many of their World Cup winning players playing that they've done these deals. But, there's going to be all eyes on Tottenham because we've got their star player. It's fantastic. Fantastic.
So, I mean, we brought in Alex Morgan, and we brought in another couple of players, and I think the other players that we brought in, they were brought in on loan, weren't they? The two other. Yeah,
the others from Orlando Pride. So Shalina Zadorsky, who's a centre half, Canadian, as I said, she came from Orlando Pride as well, and I want to say Alana Taylor, I think. Her name's fallen out of my head. I can see her. She's a tall, rangy midfielder. Actually, she looked good yesterday. Alana Kennedy, sorry, she looked good yesterday, and they're on loan. But Alex Morgan's deal is for the year. But I don't know if there's an option, because basically the NWSL is only playing a mini tournament between now and January.
Okay.
For COVID reasons and all sorts of other things, which is why we've got lots of players in the WSL. But I think Alex Morgan, as I understand it, there was a bit of a falling out with Orlando Pride because her husband was playing for the men's team and they sold him and she wasn't happy. And then she got an injury and then she had a baby. So I think she's kind of ready to properly.
They don't call an injury baby. They don't call having babies injuries these days, do they?
No, it was an injury and then a baby.
Okay.
I did say that. It was a sequence, Steve. It was a sequence. So, I think it's really exciting. And, you have to keep pushing on because, of all the transfers in the whole history of the WSL, right, amount to £490,000 in the history of the WSL.
Wow.
This summer, Chelsea spent £250,000 on Pernilla Harder. So that's where we are, is that there's beginning to be huge investment in players and making sure that, you can continue to compete, because Chelsea want to win the Champions League, which is why they're doing this,
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously there's two sides to this. You get, the exposure, you get the sponsorship and the investment and the commitment from the broadcasters and everything like that, and we get the players coming in to expand the product, so to speak, for the WSL and the interest. But I mean, as someone that will follows the team in women's football probably at that level more avidly than us, would you want to see it kind of explode in the way that the men's game exploded and the ridiculous sums of money that the players are being paid, or would you want them to see them rewarded and certainly recognised for their ability and their achievements, but do you feel that it should be managed better so that
I think it needs to be sustainable, but I think you need to build it to make it sustainable. And I'm not, I don't really want to speculate on whether it should follow the men's path. I think it is a different game. I think that it's important that, you know, I think that there's a market for the women's game that isn't necessarily men's fans as well in terms of fandom. I'm not saying that fans of the men's game shouldn't kind of get involved in women's football, because of course you can, but because I think the thing that delights me the most about supporting the Spurs women's team is that it's all about supporting the Spurs women's team. I don't have to go and feel like loads of negativity towards the opposition or feel loads of anger. I feel passion for my team, but it's positive and it's passion for my team. It's not about vitriol and anger about the opposition. And that's the thing that delights me, and that's the thing that I want to see maintained. How everything else goes, absolutely, I want to see professional women's footballers paid in a way that means that their lives are sustainable. Given that they're elite athletes, you know, like if you look at Lyon, right, they've won 6 of the 9 last Champions Leagues or something. That's not the right stat, but just to give you a sense of it.
Yeah.
The Lyon president made a conscious decision that that's what he was going to do, that he was going to invest in the women's side in the same way that he'd invested in the men's. When they fly for Champions League games, they go on the same plane as the men's team do, and they have their little head thing saying their names on it, just like the men do. You know, they use the same facilities, they've got all of that. You know, and that's what's really important, because I think if you're saying this is one club and we have elite athletes, you have to treat them as, you have to, you know, it's important to treat them as such.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, what will the game be able to afford? So that's the thing for now, is that, you know, there's kind of support from the main club, if you like, from the men's side, etc. But, you know, I want to build a sustainable women's game that is sustainable for our players to be paid by what that income is. And it might never be the same as the men's Premier League. And I think that's okay, but that comes down to my views on capitalism. You know, like I am not averse to people being like paid vast sums of money for elite activity and for being brilliant at something and all the rest of it.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be, you know, like thinking about Gareth Bale and like whether he's going to take a pay cut. Mate, if you've been paid €40 million a year for the last 8 years,
exactly,
is it really going to matter if it's like 10 million for a few years? It's like, what are you going to do with it all?
Yeah, and you.
I guess there's other people involved, though. That's the problem, isn't it?
Exactly. I think that's the that's the problem. So anyway, let's not dwell on Gareth. Well, we can actually, because obviously, we need to also think about the men's side, and we've been struggling for I don't know how many years, 27 years, 25 years to get a backup striker, because it's a backup striker that we need.
We need a backup striker,
and I think that. And I think I've said this before, and I think, we certainly need to get this out of the media that it's a backup striker that we're looking for. There needs to be a different, change in the message that's going out there, that we're looking for we're looking for 2 or 3 strikers, two strikers, so that we've got 3 strikers in the squad, because we've got Europa League, we've got FA Cup, we've got Carabao Cup, Premier League, and we've got games after game upon game upon game, and without that ability to rotate, then first of all, injuries going to happen. Number one. Secondly, competition for places will add to the players that are already there. It's quite interesting, Chris, that you mentioned Newcastle, because I did see a tweet about Newcastle earlier, saying that they've managed to outbuy us in the transfer window. So they've done better than us in the transfer window this year, because they've spent more than us. But the players that they've bought, one of them was linked with us, and universally everyone's going, well, he's not good enough. We don't want him. We don't want Wilson. He's not good enough. And then all of a sudden, he goes somewhere else, scores a goal. Fucking hell, Levy! Why didn't you buy him? I mean, apart from obviously the obvious of needing a striker, who would you, or striker or two, who would you think that we need to supplement this squad. I'll let you go first, Chris, because I think you talked about creativity. So
well, we need some spark in midfield, don't we?
Yeah.